Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and this video is for anyone looking to pick up a sci-fi book, get 50 pages in, and think to themselves, what on earth is going on? Which is why I put together a list of 5 trippy, surreal, and mind-bending sci-fi books. So let's fry some brains and get into our first recommendation, The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. The Lathe of Heaven is a story about a man whose dreams can affect reality. So for example, if he goes to sleep and dreams that someone dies, when he wakes up, it means that in the real world that person has died. So he goes to a therapist, one that specializes in dreams, in order to try and prevent himself from having dreams. He doesn't want to dream anymore. He doesn't want to be burdened with this power, responsibility problem, however you want to perceive it. And the therapist realizes, once he realizes that it is in fact real, that this person can change reality with his dreams, decides in order to change the world using this person. Something I think this book executes really well is capturing how a situation like this could affect a person's life and their psyche. For example, there's no continuity in this person's existence. Every day they wake up after having one of these dreams, something could have changed about their life, their history, the history of the world even. For example, you might think that you live in an apartment downtown, but now you have memories of living in a cabin out in the woods. And another thing that is really stressful for this main character is that they don't have a lot of control over these dreams. You know, it's a lot of responsibility. You can change the world, but it's your subconscious. You know, it's things about you that maybe you can control or you can seek help with controlling, but ultimately you don't feel particularly responsible for your dreams. And that puts a lot of fear going to bed every night. Now, I wouldn't say this is one of the craziest books on this list. This book is less about the mystery of what exactly is real or not real, because after our character has one of these effective dreams, as they're known, that is the new reality. We have to accept that this is real. So it's more about the impacts of that, the effects of that, and while it is a bit of a surreal feeling, I think the story is relatively easy to follow. And I think this book is focused more on the ideas and the themes than it is the plot. Because while I was interested in the story, I think Le Guin dedicates more of her time to really exploring the ideas to do with power and responsibility. So you have someone that is trying to manipulate someone else for the greater good, but there are often unintended consequences of these kind of acts, and there's some great ethical questions here about trying to play God, you know, when to intervene, when is it the morally right thing to do to intervene, and when is it maybe not the best idea to be playing with things of such a magnitude. And so this book builds to a confrontation between two opposing philosophies, and while I might have personally gravitated to one more than the other, I did believe that the characters believed in their perspective. The arguments that they were making seemed rational to them based on their worldview. So while you might identify or relate to some things thematically more than others within the book, the push and pull between the different conversations, the actions between our main characters, I think created for something really interesting narratively. I think this book is a great example of an author having a clear vision and then executing on that vision. I think the only minor criticism I would have is that I think I found this book more intellectually rewarding than I did emotionally. The main character is just so passive and emotionally neutral, it made it hard for me to connect with them and really get as invested and emotionally engaged in the plot and the characters as I might have in some of my all-time favorite books. I think if you're looking to dip your toe into the surreal sci-fi waters, this might be a good place to start, and it's only going to get weirder from here. Up next, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Annihilation is the story of a group of scientists on a mission to explore an area known as Area X, which is a mysterious zone in which nature seems to be reclaiming the land, and any missions previously to explore this area have resulted in mysterious deaths, and anyone that has returned from it has died shortly thereafter. Annihilation has an eerie and creepy quality to it. It's very dreamlike, or perhaps could be better described as a nightmare. Inside Area X, some strange things happen. The flora and fauna is very different from what we would expect to find in our world, and a lot of the events and descriptions, it's hard to make sense of whether they are really happening. Is this actually what goes on inside Area X, or are these hallucinations? And if so, what is making these characters hallucinate? The book provides to us the events of what is happening inside Area X, as well as flashbacks before the mission started. And while I didn't find these events the most interesting from a plot perspective, because I wasn't really engaged by these characters, I think they did a good job of grounding the story by providing us some little tidbits of this person's normal life. It really highlighted how strange things were inside of Area X. I think part of this book's popularity is due to Jeff Vandermeer's prose. It can be a little dense at times. This book's only around 200 pages, and I felt like it did take me quite a while to get through, but he can be very poetic. It's very evocative. Some of the visual descriptions are just fantastic, and I think he is a master of creating atmosphere. I think at the end of this book I had more questions than I did answers, and speaking to some people that have read the sequels that said they still felt the same way, I've only read the first book in the series at the moment, but if you're looking for a book with some weird vibes, there aren't many books that are much weirder or vibier than Annihilation. And if you're a fan of Annihilation, I would definitely recommend checking out Roadside Picnic, or vice versa, as I feel like Roadside Picnic's zone was definitely an influence on Annihilation's Area X. Moving on, we have The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch by Philip K. Dick. The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch is set in a future where nearby planets and moons have been colonized. However, they are cramped and overcrowded, and in order to put up with the tedium of everyday life, a lot of people use a drug known as Can-D. And this drug enables users to experience a temporary shared illusion when taking the drug together. However, a prominent figure known as Palmer Eldritch returns from his interstellar travels with a new drug called Chu-Z, and this is a far more potent drug that really threatens to tear down the walls between what is real and surreal. I feel like Philip K. Dick is the master of this subcategory of science fiction, and I couldn't have made this list without choosing one of his books. I ended up going with the Three Stigmata Palmer Eldritch because I think it's one of his most underrated. It's one of my favorite of his, and I think more people should give it a chance. And something that I think he does really well in this book is seamlessly transition between these realities. You never get the sensation that, oh okay, the crazy dream sequence is about to start. What happens is you'll get halfway through a page and think, wait, what's happening right now? How did we get here? Philip K. Dick manages to confuse you as much as he does the characters. PKD wrote in some different styles throughout his career, and I think this book combines some of my favorite elements from some of those different styles. For example, there are some heavy themes and some dark moments, but there's also some empathetic characters, some fun dialogue, and some crazy ideas. He has fun with the premise of this book, and I think something that PKD is a little underrated for is how funny he can be. Yes, this book is tackling things to do with drugs and religion and death, but he still has the ability to make me laugh. Another thing I enjoyed about this book was how it balanced the big ideas with also making things feel personal. Because we have this sprawling world and we have pretty large stakes in the story, but we also have some rather relatable feelings of desiring connection. I think something that was really interesting about this drug, the use of Can-D, is that the illusions that its users experience are shared. And I think it speaks to the connections that these characters are seeking in this future world where people feel disconnected, whether that's through the landscape, technology, maybe the drugs aren't helping, but that's what people are seeking. It's what they're hoping for when taking it. And I think that really worked well thematically within this story. I think this book is relatively readable, although for someone's first PKD book, I would probably recommend Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but if you read any of his books and enjoy his style, then I would definitely move The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch towards the top of your list. Up next, Norstrilia by Cordwainer Smith. This book is set in a far future where a planet called Norstrilia produces an immortality drug named Stroon, and our main character, Rod McBan, uses a supercomputer in order to play the stock market and accumulate a massive amount of wealth. However, this amount of wealth comes with a target on his back. The world building in this book is pretty out there, as we have advanced technology, societal structures that are different from modern day, and a lot of body modifications. For example, we have people that are part people and part cat. On the one hand, this is a fun, adventurous story with people trying to track down our main character and him trying to escape. I also think that Cordwainer Smith has quite a good sense of humor as a writer, but I think he also deals with some important themes. On the larger scale, he tackles some things to do with government, the economy, and social class. It also touches on some personal aspects, as our main character lives in a telepathic society, and his powers of telepathy are very weak, and he's viewed as a cripple. So this makes him feel like an outsider and an outcast, and he's even under threat of being culled under population laws. So as we follow this journey, he's also on a journey to find external acceptance from other people, while also internally trying to come to terms with these feelings of abandonment and not feeling accepted. I think this book juggles a lot of different ideas, and to mix metaphors, I don't think all of them hit the bullseye, but in the end, this was definitely still a worthwhile and unique reading experience. And finally, we have Ice by Anna Kavan. Ice is set in a post-apocalyptic future where the world is slowly being consumed by ice, and our narrator is on a relentless and obsessive journey to find a woman with albino hair. Ice feels somewhere between a fairy tale and a nightmare. A lot of things that happen in this story seem hard to believe. They're very coincidental or convenient. Our main character will keep bumping into the same people, or just happen to find what he's looking for by happenstance. And this story cycle just repeats itself over and over again in this secular fashion that kind of feels like a bad dream that you can't get away from, that just keeps on happening over and over again. This book is written in the first person, and our narrator is both unlikable and unreliable. As the story progresses, it can be hard to tell whether things are really happening, whether they're a metaphor, or whether they're hallucinations. Even in the more grounded moments, I found it hard to believe our main character. Often I was just like, not buying it, buddy, not buying it. And through this dreamlike journey, the book explores some rather serious themes. We have things like environmental disasters, as well as addiction and feelings of helplessness. And our main character's journey is one of violent obsession and physical entitlement. This is probably the most uncomfortable and unnerving read on this list, and I don't think it's all that satisfying from a plot perspective, but I do think it is very powerful and thought-provoking thematically. So there you go, those are 5 surreal, trippy, and mind-bending sci-fi books. Let me know your thoughts on these if you've read them, and let me know some of your other favorites when it comes to this type of sci-fi down in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima, a New Eden, Half Ogre, Zakawe, and the Uncanny Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.